Good evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to our special Centennial News Update of the progress of globalization. As usual, my name is Julian Slaughter, and today we're bringing a special program just to celebrate the progress that has been made over the years, and take a look back at all that happened and allowed this great change, just so we can appreciate it a little bit more. To start, the advancement of renewable energy, that was the spark that led to the changes that everyone wanted and needed to see. We're going to dive into an analysis of the changes that allowed so many other benefits to run their course. Truly, it was the advent of higher absorption rates for solar energy and improved conversion for wind turbines that allowed the world to wean off of a reliance on oil and coal and start to use the natural energy the world provides to survive. To give us a better insight, we have on scene with us a professional in the industry to allow us to glean the kind of energy and effort that went into these endeavors. I'm here with Dr. Daniels, who's conducting research on the applications of wind power and how such technology can become even further ingrained in our everyday lives. Dr. Daniels, first of all, thank you for being here with us today. You're quite the esteemed man. What is it like working on a system that could potentially continue to alter the lives of millions of people, even billions?
So, working on a system like this definitely comes with its own form of urgency.
Of course.
After the implementation of the island-wide wind grid in Puerto Rico, it seemed obvious that harnessing wind power wasn't just a possibility in landlocked regions. The unlocked potential of islands became something that we could not only reach but tap into. In the mid-21st century, we began to see some of the major effects of global warming, such as rising sea levels, coastal cities like New Orleans and Miami. As this happened, people who once doubted global warming, they really came to realize that climate change was indeed a serious problem. And this also resulted in a mass effort around the world to stop the climate change. During this time, there had been immense progress in research and development to make renewable form of energy, such as wind and solar energy, those more efficient, more cost-effective energy. And also, as people's opinion on global warming began to take form, politicians listened to their cries, and millions of dollars were invested into renewable energy. Over the years, the overall cost of implementing wind turbines has decreased significantly as technology has advanced. And not only that, but the efficiency has increased to the point that not installing them will be seen as irresponsible by the people of said nation.
Thank you for this insight. What you said has raised some other questions. One of them being, where do you see this technology being used? You mentioned the wind farm in Puerto Rico. Are there other places that this has been implemented?
Oh yeah, of course. Luckily the wind power is strictly sustainable and can be implemented with relative ease. Winds tend to be strongest on coastal cities all over the globe, and specifically in the United States, in the Midwest region. Wind energy has been present in many of these places for over a century. But over time, more and more solar farms were being built into these locations. And slowly but surely, wind energy began to outcompete and outperform other forms of energy, like oil and natural gas. We are even able to implement dual powering structures in the water on coastal cities. Using current power motors, we can have a string of wind turbines in the ocean, creating dual powered systems.
So what, in your opinion then, as a professional in this area, doctor, PhD, was the greatest challenge for scientists in implementing renewable forms of energy over the past century?
Well, you see, there were a abundance of issues where renewable forms of energy were first being implemented. First off, you had the big oil companies that were, trying to stop the incoming wave of renewables. I think many of them knew that the end of petroleum was coming, and some even made the effort to conduct research into making renewables more sustainable and efficient. Most of these oil companies held huge amount of influence over the energy industry. And for years and years, they tried to avoid using renewables to save money. But most of that changed when public opinion about climate change shifted dramatically. Most of these companies want to stay in business, and so some of them adapted to the shifting market. And unluckily, one could argue that those few companies actually allow the shift to renewable to happen at a much faster rate.
Now, you've mentioned what sounds like a project on a grand global scale. Are there any communication challenges with such a wide-reaching task?
Oh yeah, of course there are a lot of challenge in terms of communication. But I mean, the point I'm trying to make is that although there are surely communication barriers, our partners abroad foster an atmosphere of warmth and understanding that that really makes working together really simple. And with the increased internet access, the connected nature of our work, and by extension our lives, to that of others has greatly intensified. I'm now able to connect with colleagues who are working in remote parts of the world better than ever before. And virtually all scientists understand that the global warming is a serious issue. And during the 21st century, we really came close to experience some of the worst effects of it. And apparently, we're still experiencing some of these side effects, even to nowadays. And we even had to carefully manage our resources to avoid a repeat of the excess of the 21st century. But scientists from all over the world have been collaborating to develop a new innovation that will make energy even more efficient and sustainable.
Well,
so, I mean, that really allowed this to be a global effort.
Well, thank you for coming, Dr. Daniels, and speaking with us today. It was incredible to have you. The insights that were given by someone of your esteem was quite an honor. Thank you so much. Thank you. Again, that was Dr. Daniels giving us an insightful look into the past century of energy innovations. As some people can probably remember, the rise of renewable energy was a very slow but necessary process over the past 100 years. Not only has it helped the environment, but it has boosted the economy as well, since the US is home to some of the biggest renewable energy corporations in the world. Now let's hear a little bit about the other magnificent advances in science and technology across the world.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Grace.
And welcome back to our nightly Jurassic News program for a special look into the past 100 years of global technological progress.
Not only has renewable energy taken off, but much of the trash that once filled the oceans is still in the progress of being removed. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch at its height was over 2 million square kilometers in size. Huge efforts were taken to clean up our oceans, and new technological innovations allowed this to happen. Around 2050, efforts to remove garbage from the oceans began to make significant strides. Ocean cleanup systems were placed in the locations of the 5 ocean gyres, an effort that took approximately 50 years to accomplish. Most of the trash, both macro and micro in scale, has been removed to this day. New underwater probes have been able to capture microparticles of plastic from even the deepest reaches of the ocean. Scientists and engineers have worked to restore the marine life in these areas as well.
To prevent the mistakes of the past from reoccurring, scientists found a way to make biodegradable plastic. As the petroleum industry was coming to an end, the need for a new plastic alternative was a top priority. Through years of research and collaboration among scientists and engineers, a solution was finally found. A form of biodegradable plastic was invented, and over the years, this new product was improved upon and is used for a variety of purposes. Grocery bags use a form of the plastic that will biodegrade after 1 year. For products that are meant to last for years, this biodegradable plastic was engineered to be able to last for longer periods of time if needed, and can be used up to 20 years after degrading.
Not only have we seen huge strides in the energy industry, but advancements in genetic engineering have led to giant leaps in environmental and medical fields as well. Genetic engineering has the ability to restore ecosystems that fell into imbalance when many key species became extinct due to the exploitation of resources by our ancestors. However, after the collapse of the Jurassic Corporation and the resulting incident in Japan, many laws were implemented for genetic engineering. As we all know, we are no longer allowed to bring dinosaurs back to life.
However, in the medical field, This genetic engineering technology was first implemented to restore many habitats and ecosystems that had been destroyed by humans. But as time went on, we realized the potential that this technology had to improve human health. While genetic engineering has many ethical concerns associated with it, scientists were able to find a way to prevent inheritable diseases such as cancer, cystic fibrosis, and blood disorders. For years, this technology was being researched and developments were made ensuring that this technology would not have any harmful, unintended side effects.
When this technology first came about in the 21st century, many people were opposed to it and feared that this would lead to the creation of designer babies, that people would choose certain characteristics for their children, such as blue eyes or a high IQ.
However, laws were implemented to limit the use of genetic engineering, stating that it could only be used to prevent incurable diseases. When first implemented, genetic engineering was very expensive and few insurance agencies chose to cover the cost of it. But as people began to realize that this technology could be used to save many lives, public opinion began to shift about genetic engineering, and it became a more accepted form of medical treatment.
This technology was primarily used in first world countries when it began, and was most prominent in the United States, some European countries, and some East Asian countries. However, global efforts have brought these cures to developing nations as well as to improve the health and the living conditions of the people there.
In other news, with the availability of non-renewable resources on Earth diminishing, the Space Mining Company has released a new report detailing a plan for the expansion of their asteroid mining program, allowing humanity to gather resources from space and allowing for the preservation of natural resources here on Earth. Some of these resources include copper, silver, and platinum, as well as important building materials such as palladium and titanium.
As anyone can see, in the past century, many advancements in this technology have been made, most notably in the medical, energy, and space industries. Thank you for tuning into our special program to show you some of the technological progress that has been made in the past 100 years.
And now over to George and Ethan for an exclusive Jurassic News report on how our world is making major strides towards demilitarization and world peace.
Good evening, everyone. My name's George,
And my name's Ethan.
and we're here to conclude our Centennial program with a look at the advancements we've made as a global society, economically, politically, and socially.
As we are sure you are all aware, the times of the past are gone. Along with that is the ever-present fear of total and complete nuclear annihilation. Many have heard the stories of the Trump and Kim Jong-un standoff, of the Cold War that took place between the United States and the Soviet Union in the late 20th century, and the terror that came with the never knowing if the button would ever be pressed.
Those days, however, are behind us, thanks to advancements made in the power of the UN and demilitarization of many countries. At the bare minimum now, countries are required to disassemble all weapons of mass destruction so as to prevent mutually assured destruction. Once that was accomplished, militaries slowly moved control over to delegates of the UN from each country so that they could best decide how to deal with problems. Once governments were set in places of civil unrest, many pacts were reached. Peace ensued to allow all nations to send their soldiers back home.
With the increased power of the UN, Middle Eastern nations were encouraged to agree to a lasting resolution. With the decline in petroleum consumption worldwide, OPEC nations lost a significant amount of power and eventually came to terms with the UN's peace deals.
With the interconnectedness that came with the rise of the internet, people became more open-minded towards others. The internet also allowed people from all over the world to connect with each other, allowing them to learn about different cultures and embrace our differences rather than reject them.
And many of us have heard of the tensions that existed between the United States and the Soviet Union during the Cold War during the late 20th century. People consistently lived in fear that a nuclear war would break out and annihilate everyone. While this conflict ended, tensions still existed between the United States and Russia for many more decades.
In the early 21st century, a new conflict arose between the United States and North Korea. The two countries exchanged threats with each other that were never actually followed through. These tensions, however, eased when the Trump presidency ended in 2020, and a few years later, Kim Jong-un of North Korea was assassinated. With his death, the people of North Korea revolted and a civil war took place. South Korea sided with the people of North Korea, and after years of conflict, the North and South were unified to form one nation, the unified Korea. This new unified Korea has proven to be an economic and social powerhouse, with the rapid development of North Korea to modernize and be a key advocate for human rights worldwide.
With the decline of authoritarian governments, conflict between countries decreased as well. The United Nations came to the conclusion that in order to preserve peace and to prevent total global annihilation through nuclear war, countries would have to halt the production of nuclear weapons and slowly dismantle the arsenals that they had built.
The decline in conflict also led to an increase in collaboration between nations. Countries began working together to achieve common goals such as world peace, stopping climate change, overall economic growth in the world, as well as medical advancements.
Progress can still be made in these areas, but in the past century, immense strides have been made in each of these areas, as was detailed in our previous statements.
When it comes to economic growth, advancements in technology led to new economic opportunities. With the rise of renewable energy resources, medical innovations, new materials for consumer products, the internet, and collaboration between countries, a new era was brought about of economic and technological growth.
Policies were implemented to support developing nations to bring about political and economic prosperity in these countries. This took decades to accomplish, but with the proper funding within the United Nations, as well as changes to the power distribution in the World Bank and IMF, developed countries were able to help developing countries stabilize their governments and prosper.
World poverty is currently at an all-time low, and so is world hunger. Distribution of resources around the world were revised to lessen inequality between nations. Only a few decades ago, many developing countries didn't have enough resources for their people, while many living in the US had plentiful resources, which they would use in excess.
To help developing nations, the UN formed many programs in these countries that would aid in the distribution of resources, help empower women, enhance schooling, and create new industries.
Empowering women lowered the birth rates in many developing countries, and it also encouraged women to receive an education.
Over the past century, huge advancements were made in the political and economic landscape. Hopefully, in the years to come, this uphill trend will continue, and the quality of life of people all over the world will continue to improve as well.
We'd like to thank you all for tuning into our Centennial Special Look at the past 100 years of progress. We can only hope progress continues for the next century.